Hi, I'm Benny from Thomann, and I'm here today with Andy Powers from Taylor Guitars.
Hi.
Hi Andy, how are you?
I'm quite well. It's a beautiful thing you've got here at House of Thomann.
I'm glad you like it here. We've prepared some guitars, so you can maybe show us a little bit what your intentions were when designing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Because at Taylor Guitars, what we're most interested in is building musical instruments.
Yeah.
Now, a guitar, to me, is never the sum of its specifications. It's not just details on a list. It's an instrument. The whole point is to make a gratifying musical experience for the player. The way that guitar looks, the way it feels when you hold it, the way it sounds. I mean, even literally the way it, the way it smells. Like all of that has to be part of the musical experience.
Yeah.
And that's what we're so passionate about. So the guitar that I've got here in my hands, this one is a 914 model. It's got a cutaway with the Expression System 2 pickup in it. And if you want to talk about, the particulars, yeah, we can go with it. It has a nut width of 1 3/4 inch and things like that. But what's more interesting to me as a builder and a player is to know, okay, well, this guitar is built with very, very premium Sitka spruce top and East Indian rosewood on the back and sides. Okay, well, that combined with this shape has a real interesting recipe. Okay, those woods, you think of them like seasonings, like if you were cooking.
Yeah.
The design is that's the actual recipe you were making. That's the dish you're cooking. The woods you make it from are seasonings that accentuate that. Okay, so that design for this guitar has real unique internal architecture. It's something we call advanced performance bracing. And there are different elements that go along with that. An ultra-thin finish assembled with hot hide glue, things like that. The wood thicknesses are very, very specific. But all of these different elements, I mean, I guess you could call them specifications, they all come together as part of this recipe that makes this guitar really unique in its response. So all of those pieces, when we put them together, we end up with an instrument that has a huge amount of dynamic range. There's a real emphasis on the string separation as well as the touch sensitivity. So you have this real expressive kind of thing.
Taylor has a very interesting philosophy concerning sustainability.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us something about how you at Taylor treat rosewood?
Well, the rosewood is interesting because it's actually coming from shade trees. Throughout India, the eastern part, there's a lot of tea plantations. And these trees have been planted for quite some time, more than 100 years now, as shade trees, because the tea plants do well underneath there.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, so the East Indian rosewood that we've been buying from one family that's been cutting this material for us for over 35 years now. So that has a real strong, healthy outlook for the future. For us, sustainability is not merely following the laws or the regulations. That's not good enough. It has to be an instrument or wood that's good for the forest. It's healthy for the forest to be used. Something that has a real strong ecological long-term outlook. It has to be a wood that's healthy for the people who are cutting it. It has to allow them to continue using this resource long into the future, well past my life is done.
So everybody profits from it.
The guitar has to be good for everybody. It has to be good for the forest. It has to be good for the person cutting the wood. Finally, it has to be wonderful for the musician. That leads to an interesting instrument that we have here. This is one of our 600 series guitars. Okay, well, for years we've been building guitars with maple on the back and sides.
Right.
Okay, this particular one has a roasted Sitka spruce top, so it has a little darker color. It feels a little more like a guitar that's been around for a few years. Now, maple is one of the woods that has a very, very healthy long-term outlook. So much so that one of our close wood cutting partners up in essentially it's a local wood for us. It's on the west coast of the United States. He started propagating maple specifically for guitar usage. It's almost like in the United States we have an expression called farm to table, where you're growing food and it's being a local food that's served, either in the restaurant attached to it or very close to its source. These are maple trees that are coming from cuttings and being replanted. So you know what the parent tree was like, and this is a genetic identical tree to that. So you know what kind of wood you're going to end up with in the future, whether it was a good tree or a bad tree. Only take cuttings from the good trees, and repropagating these trees to plant them. So it's almost like a guitar wood farm. So in 30 years' time, 40 years' time, there will be maple trees that were grown specifically to build guitars from.
Okay.
And so a guitar like this is good for that future, because this is something that when we can make an instrument that has this gratifying experience, it allows players to adopt that as part of their regular repertoire. I mean, for years, guitar players have looked at maple flat top guitars and thought, it's too bright.
Yeah.
It's too, it has a short decay.
That's what everybody thinks when you use maple as a tone wood. It's too bright.
Totally. It feels like the most kind thing that you could say about it is, well, it cuts well in a mix.
Yes.
And that's not good enough, because, we're looking at this and going, well, maple is it's a first-rate tone wood. I mean, the violin world has insisted on nothing but spruce and maple for the last 300 years. Archtop guitars, mandolins, electric guitars, all kinds of things use this. Well, part of the problem was that as guitar makers who have worked in a factory setting, we would take a design that we had for a rosewood guitar, take the rosewood off and put maple in its place.
And never changed the design.
Never changed the design. Like, well, no kidding. Those woods are nothing alike.
Okay.
They're not at all the same. So why should I expect them to sound the same? So with these guitars, what we did was we took maple and we made it in a way look more traditional. That's why it has this beautiful dark brown color over the curly maple, real highly figured, with a torrefied Sitka spruce top. But I completely changed the internal architecture so that it wasn't a real crisp, overly bright sounding guitar. And instead, it relies on one of maple's best attributes, which is its player reflective quality. By that I mean, whoever picks up this guitar, the guitar sounds like that person.
Okay.
So if you play it real dark, it's a dark sounding guitar.
Gives you an honest feedback.
Yeah. If you play it bright, it'll be bright. If you play it with a real heavy hand and hit it real hard, it's going to respond with punch. That's one of the real unique qualities that maple gives you. So these guitars have this incredible long-term outlook. So for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, we're going to be seeing a lot more maple guitars because that's a wood that is healthy to harvest and makes a first-rate guitar.
Nice tunes, Andy. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we got two other guitars.
Yeah.
If I may hand you this one.
Make sure that's on our stand real good. This is a cool one.
You have ebony fretboards on all Taylor models, is that right?
Yeah, that's true. Now, we have actually done that for a number of years. It's the thought was, well, let's invest in ebony because, frankly, we like ebony fingerboards. We like putting frets in it. We like the stiffness that it gives to a neck. We like the way it wears for the player over time. I mean, that's why it's been a fingerboard choice for the bowed instrument world and for a lot of high-end guitars and mandolins and banjos and everything. It's a first-rate wood for that. Well, a number of years ago now, there was an opportunity for us to invest in kind of the last ebony forest in the world where it's ecologically sound to take trees from. And so we took control of that mill to operate it at a higher standard and a higher level. Not just by taking more wood out. That's not what we're actually doing. We're actually taking less trees out of the forest now than before. But what we're doing is we're getting a higher yield and using all of the material that's coming out. Not just the ebony that's jet black, but we're taking what the forest will give us.
And you're not throwing it away.
You're not throwing it away. It used to be that 10 trees would be cut down, and ebony naturally has some brownish streaks or some curl and some color. But for every 10 trees that were cut down, only one would be jet black. And so what the loggers used to do is they'd cut the trees down and only take the one black one. Well, 10 trees were cut down, and they were just left in the forest to rot.
And they only use 10% of the wood.
Yeah, that's totally not okay to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that might have been okay 100 years ago, but that's not okay now. And so right then and there, when we discovered that, decided, okay, we're going to put a stop to that, because all of this wood is wonderful instrument grade tone wood. And we chose to embrace the uniqueness in its colors from different aspects. So what we do now is every ebony tree that's cut, we take it back and we make first-rate guitars out of it. Okay, so all the ebony that you see on fingerboard, headstock, bridge, all that's coming from our own ebony plantation, where we're now actually repropagating and planting ebony trees to replace what's been done. Now, this particular guitar is unique. This is a smaller design. We call it a grand concert. This particular one has a 12-fret neck, which has this real interesting characteristic where it shifts the whole vibrating length of the string back on the guitar.
And you got a different scale on it.
Yeah, it's a little shorter scale. We typically will put a 24 and 7/8 inch scale length on our grand concert size guitars. But this one, by virtue of having the 12-fret neck to the body joint, it pulls both hands in, so it's a real compact, comfortable kind of guitar. As well, it has a uniquely warm, powerful voice because of where the top is set in motion from. This is one of our new 700 series models. So this would be for us we call it a 712 12-fret guitar. But what the 700 series guitar stands for us is a guitar that's made with Lutz spruce on top, which is a naturally occurring hybrid spruce, East Indian rosewood on the back and sides, with this unique decoration package. So all the appointments have this real kind of organic, in a way woody, kind of real holistic look to them. The koa binding here is coming from a koa forest that we're working with in Hawaii to propagate koa trees and harvest that in a responsible way. Real unique half herringbone made of Western Douglas fir. Now, all these details, they add up into one instrument that has this real unique cohesive personality. What's so interesting to compare, say, this guitar and a 900 series guitar, even though they're very similar materials, the architecture and the design of the guitar gives it a completely different personality. Where the 900 series and the 800 series guitars have a real like high fidelity kind of voice. This one has a real warm, kind of blended sort of voice. It makes for an incredible accompaniment instrument, or for somebody who's looking for a more traditional kind of rhythm instrument or something like that. They want that kind of husky, low-end power. That's what these guitars give you.
Okay, can you play us something?
Sure.
Nice. All Taylor guitars have a bolt-on neck.
Yeah, they do actually.
Can you tell us something about that and what advantage you have over a set neck, for example?
Yeah, well, you have to go back in a lot of ways to our whole philosophy of building instruments. What Bob Taylor and I are trying to do is to make instruments that best serve the players. That's our ultimate goal, is to make musical instruments that satisfy the needs of players. Now for us, that means we have to make some choices. Okay, you choose, say, a set neck or a bolted-on neck or a Spanish heel neck or any of the different ways that you could build an instrument. And what we find is that the ability to carefully control accurately the neck angle, both when the guitar is brand new and for decades after, that is something that serves a musician very well. So that was something that Bob had developed, was this ability to, with ultra machinist precision, be able to control the neck angle to within thousandths of an inch. I mean, literally the thickness of a piece of paper.
Okay.
You can control the neck angle to that degree of accuracy. That allows us to have a guitar that serves the musician now and long into the future. So we have these necks that we call the NT neck, or the Taylor neck really, and the way that it mates to the body has two precisely milled spacers in between. So we set the guitar up, and then at any point, if a player needs to change the action, change the setup, or as the guitar naturally ages and gets more comfortable, kind of relaxes into itself, within a matter of minutes, the neck can be removed, readjusted, and set to the optimum angle. So it's a neck that has unbelievable precision in the fingerboard surface, the way it's manufactured, the way that it's mated to the body, that gives you a level of service and a level of control that you won't find in any other acoustic guitar.
And it's future-proof because you know there won't be any problem in the future which you can't handle from the service
Exactly.
side.
Or at some point, I mean, every acoustic flat-top guitar is going to need a neck reset at some point. That's just the way things work. Whether that's 10 years from now, 30 years from now, 100 years from now, it's going to happen. And so in this case, rather than completely tearing the guitar apart, using steam to soften glue and pull the thing apart to hopefully recut that joint and get it glued back together, that's a very damaging operation oftentimes. In this case, it can come apart within minutes, use a new set of spacers, put it back together, and you're off to your next gig.
Okay. We got one last guitar.
Yeah, I'll hand you that one. I haven't checked the tuning on this one, but we'll give it our best shot.
So this is a 12 string.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have some different materials used on that one.
Yeah, this is our 562 model. It's something new for us. Now, most of the time, 12-string guitars, they've been built on a real large body, a real big platform. Now, for some players, that works very well. But for a lot of folks, the way that we would use 12-string guitars in a band setting or in a studio is not so much for this huge, powerful voice. It's actually for the delicacy, that real chimey, octave-centric kind of sound. And so for that, a smaller body is better suited for that. Okay, so in this case, we're building this guitar around this grand concert shape with a shorter scale 12-fret neck. And then to accentuate that unique clarity, we're building the whole guitar with mahogany on the top, the back, and the sides, the neck as well. Now the mahogany, compared to, say, rosewood, gives you a real fundamental strong sound where the note you play is the note you get. It doesn't have a real strong overtone chime. And so it translates as having a lot of clarity. It's a very precise, easy to handle sound that complements this chimey 12-string voice real well. So when you put these things together, you have a unique instrument in that it's unlike other 12-string guitars you might have tried.
Okay. Can you show us something?
Sure.
Maybe we're lucky and it's in tune. Thank you. You have an expression system too on this guitar?
Yeah, this is all our guitars were fitting with the expression system too, with the exception of the GS Minis and the Baby and Big Baby, because this pickup system is one of the most usable, stage-friendly acoustic guitar pickups we've ever tried. Rather than putting piezo crystals underneath the saddle like a traditional undersaddle pickup, this is actually putting the crystals behind the saddle, alongside it really. Now what happens when we do that is a couple of things. First of all, we get to control the amount of pressure that's actually on that crystal.
Okay.
It's important because piezo crystals only have dynamic range up to about 6 pounds of pressure. Now if I put it underneath the saddle, they get crushed by about 60 pounds of pressure.
Okay.
So it's like 10 times the amount that the thing can really handle. So typically that makes an undersaddle pickup kind of sound like that. It's real, real nasal and real squished like that.
Crushed.
Yeah, it sounds crushed.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we put it behind, we have the ability to control the amount of pressure that it has. The second thing it does for you is it allows you to capture more of the natural three-dimensional motion of the guitar's top. So you end up with a lot more natural, dynamic kind of response out of this pickup. Most of the time people don't realize that there's a lot of different motion that's happening in a flat top guitar. And the real irony is that the sound of a guitar does not live on or in the guitar itself. It actually lives in the air that's around the instrument. Okay? Well, that's impossible to gather. So what we're doing by putting this pickup behind the saddle is we're gathering as much of its natural motion as we can in a pickup that's still attached to the body, so that we can get a pretty honest representation of the kinds of sound that guitar would make. So this system, it's real simple to use, it has a volume, a bass, and a treble control. And it's been the most kind of plug-in and play friendly unit we've tried, whether from small coffee shops or somebody plugging into an amp to arenas. Now, it's been working really well for a lot of musicians. One last thought that I'd like to leave with is the reason we build these guitars is so that people can go take them and play music on them.
Okay.
That's what does it for us.
They're not for your living room wall. They are meant to be played.
They are meant to be played. I love when someone can appreciate the artwork of it and want to hang it on a wall and look at it. But that alone is not a good enough reason to build the instrument.
Yeah, they're tools for musicians.
Yeah, it's a tool for a musician. And so that is the passion that drives us. We're always trying to make every guitar a little better than the last one that we made. In everything that we do, we're trying to do our very best. What's best for the forest, what's best for the musician, what's best for their audience. It has to survive to serve all those people well. So we're really thrilled to be building these guitars.
Would you care to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
How you came to work with Taylor and what your education was, for example?
Well, I started life as the son of a carpenter. My dad's a carpenter, and both my parents are hobbyist musicians. So growing up, there was a lot of music around our house, and I had an early taste for woodworking, because there were tools around and scraps of wood and things. And I had started on piano when I was very, very young. And my parents had a guitar, and I loved the shape of it. I loved the shape of the guitar. I fell in love with the songs that my parents would play on the guitar. I just couldn't get enough of it. And one day, I was about 7 years old at the time, my dad brought home a piece of wood that was big enough for me to cut a guitar shape out of. So I had the thought, I'm going to build a guitar. I mean, keep in mind, I was 7, maybe 8 years old, something like that.
So it was not the first Taylor guitar.
No, it was not the first Taylor guitar. But I got this guitar together. It took me forever. And I went to put strings on it. I had 6 mismatched tuners from that I begged from a local music store, a used set of strings. And I got strings on this thing, started tuning it up, and the entire thing exploded into pieces. I was basically hooked from then on.
Okay.
And so I got...
You kept trying.
Yeah, I mean, I was upset. I'm sure I cried for a little while. But then I realized, well, it was kind of like I put a firecracker in it. That was amazing. And so I was really hooked on guitars and building guitars from then on. And so I started building and selling instruments to friends and then professional musicians. I was doing repairs and restorations for all the local music shops and then museums and touring professionals and things. And honestly, building instruments is kind of all I've ever done. It wasn't till after I'd finished at a university that I realized, like, wow, I love playing music, but I have spent most of my university years and everything before building and selling instruments to my professors and my classmates, as well as all of these professional musicians and amateurs and recreationalists. I guess I'm a guitar maker. Yeah, so Bob calls me out of the blue. He goes, you need to come down to the shop alone. I thought, oh boy, I've really done it now. He's going to throw me in the wood chipper or something. And instead of throwing me into the wood chipper, we sit down and he goes, my entire life I've pursued building guitars. And the last thing that I'd ever want to happen is for Taylor Guitars to turn into a corporation that just makes products, that makes SKUs. We don't make SKUs, we make instruments. These are kind of the paintbrushes for musical artists. It's like, that's an honor. And it's something that deserves our best effort. It goes, so what we should do is you should kind of pick up the torch for me, because this is a company that needs to be run by a guitar maker who's a player, who's a musician, who knows what a good guitar is and knows what it should be, because that's the way that musicians are best served. And so we talked about it for quite some time. And
that's a bold statement.
Yeah, for a while I had work I had to finish up, but we started working together from then on so that Taylor Guitars can be a guitar company driven by a guitar maker for another generation into the future. That's where we feel good guitars come from, is from the hands of a guitar maker, a musician, into the hands of another musician.
Because you know what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It would be like a painter who couldn't see or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You need to know what that thing is like. You need to know whether it's good, so that you can honestly say, this is a good musical thing. I've used it myself. I can appreciate. There's a level of intimacy there that someone who doesn't play, or a corporation who is not made of musicians, they don't understand that the things they're making, what they mean to the people using them.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure to be here.
Andy, it was great having you.
Thank you.
We would be happy to see you again.
Yep, I'll be happy to be here.
Time for some heavy metal. Thank you.
On 12 string. Of course.
Of course.